I've never seen 42 people so excited to divide something that didn't belong to them. The air inside the resort's conference hall smelled of champagne and polished ego, every laugh echoing against glass walls that overlooked the rolling hills of Napa Valley. My family called it a reunion. I called it an auction one where I wasn't invited to bid. My name is Nora Bennett, and I was sitting in the back row quietly watching the show. On stage, Uncle Edward stood in front of a projector, flashing images of ocean villas, city penthouses, and mountain cabins, each one tagged with a golden family crest. The Bennett legacy, he declared proudly, will now be passed down to those who truly represent our name. Everyone clapped. Everyone except me. When the applause faded, I caught my reflection in a half-empty wine glass, calm, unreadable the way I'd trained myself to be. Edward's voice filled the room again, assigning properties like trophies, the Malibu villa to Chloe, the Aspen cabin to Ethan, the Singapore apartment to Sophia. My name never came up. Someone behind me whispered, "Maybe Nora's still renting that tiny apartment." A few chuckles followed. I smiled just a little, not out of politeness, but because I already knew what was about to happen. Beneath the table, my phone vibrated once a silent message from my assistant team is ready. "Security in position." I stood up, smoothed my gray blazer, and finally spoke for the first time that evening. "Uncle Edward," I said evenly, "before you continue, I think there's something you should know." 42 heads turned toward me. None of them had any idea that within the next 10 minutes, everything they thought they owned, every villa, every penthouse, every illusion of power would crumble right in front of them. Edward's hand froze mid-gesture, the champagne glass still glinting under the soft chandelier light. "Nora, dear," he said, smiling the way people smile at a child interrupting dinner. "We'll discuss your turn later. For now, let the adults handle the estate matters." Laughter rolled through the room like a rehearsed cue. Chloe flipped her blonde hair and whispered something to Ethan, who smirked without even hiding it. I stayed standing. My pulse didn't race. It never did when I'd already planned for the outcome. "Actually, I said this concerns everyone in this room." My voice was steady enough to cut through the chatter. The silence that followed was almost polite before Edward broke it with a sigh. "Sweetheart, you've done very well in your freelance thing," he said, waving his hand vaguely. "But these are heritage assets. They require people who can uphold the Bennett reputation. You understand?" The word heritage stung more than it should have. He'd been using it for years to excuse bad decisions and failed investments. I glanced around the table, designer watches flashing under crystal light, cousins sipping champagne they hadn't paid for, smiling at a man who'd lost half the family fortune and still acted like a patriarch. I could have yelled. I could have told them right there that the deeds were already in my name. But revenge isn't loud, it's precise, so I played along. "Of course, Uncle," I said softly. "It's just maybe you should double-check those ownership documents before you sign them." That earned another wave of laughter. Chloe tilted her glass toward me. "Oh, Nora," she said sweetly. "Don't worry. Someday you'll have a house of your own." I smiled back. "I already do," I said. 7 of them, actually. The laughter died faster than it had started. Edward's smile faltered for the first time, but he recovered quickly. "Now that's the spirit," he said. "Dream big." He moved to the next slide, announcing the Tuscany villa as Chloe's new residence. Cameras flashed. Someone toasted to new beginnings. Under the table, my phone vibrated again. "Proceed?" I typed one word back, "Yes." And for the first time that evening, I felt something close to satisfaction. The kind that comes right before a storm, quiet, deliberate, and impossible to stop. The conference doors opened mid-toast. The hinges creaked louder than they should have, slicing through laughter like a knife through silk. Heads turned as 3 people in dark suits entered, flanked by 2 guards. At their front was Victoria Hale, my operations director, sharp, poised, merciless. Behind her, Daniel Rivers, my chief legal counsel, silent and steady as ever. Together they looked like judgment given form. "Who are these people?" Edward demanded, his smile faltering. Victoria placed a leather folder on the table. "Good evening, Mr. Bennett. We're here on behalf of Bennett Capital Holdings under authorization of its CEO, Ms. Nora Bennett." Silence. My name hung in the air like a verdict. Daniel opened the folder. "These properties, Tuscany, Aspen, Singapore, and others, were legally purchased and maintained under Ms. Bennett's corporation." Laughter flickered and died. "That's impossible," Edward said. "You don't have that kind of money." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Her annual earnings exceed $450,000. She does." I stepped forward. "After your trust collapsed, I bought the assets back to keep our name out of bankruptcy court." Victoria gestured to the guards. "Collect the forged documents." The rustle of papers filled the room like rain. Edward slammed the table. "You can't just claim ownership." "These have been Bennett properties for generations." "They were," Daniel said evenly, "until they weren't." Chloe's voice cracked. "But we've been staying there every summer." "Yes," I said. "As my guests. I never corrected you until you tried to redistribute what you don't own." "You tricked us," Ethan spat. "No, I protected you from yourselves. You mistook silence for weakness." Victoria's tone cut through. The notary stamps were counterfeit. "We've filed notice with the state. Criminal charges are possible." The room froze. Even the air felt still. Edward's voice dropped. "You'd ruin your family for this." I met his eyes. "You ruined it when you lied. I'm just cleaning up." The projector hummed behind him, still showing the slideshow of what was lost. "Turn that off," I said. The screen went black. "That's your legacy now. No illusion, just ownership." Edward sank into his chair. "Let's keep this quiet," he whispered. "No need for lawyers or press." "It's already official," I said. "This isn't gossip, it's accountability." He swallowed hard. "You could have warned me." "I did. You just never listened." Aunt Maggie rose, her voice gentle. "You did what he couldn't. You protected us." Something in me eased. Enough has been said. Edward looked broken. "So, what happens now?" Victoria slid new documents across the table. "Updated contracts. If family members wish to continue using the properties Tuscany, Malibu, Aspen, Singapore, they may do so under rental agreements. Market rate renewed annually." Ethan gaped. "You want us to pay to stay in our own homes?" "They're not family homes anymore," I said. "They're assets." I offered respect. You mistook it for permission. Chloe's voice cracked. "You can't just erase decades of tradition." "I didn't erase anything," I replied. "Uncle Edward did, when he let those properties go into foreclosure. I simply bought what he lost." Her eyes filled with tears. "But I told everyone I owned the villa." "Then maybe next time," I said gently, "verify the deed before you brag about it." Daniel handed Edward his copy. "Mr. Bennett, you'll find the terms reasonable. Option 1 sign as tenants. Option 2 forfeit access entirely." Edward's hand shook. "You're destroying this family," he whispered. I leaned forward slightly. "No, I'm redefining it. You taught us that legacy was about ownership and image. I'm teaching you that it's about truth and accountability." The gods collected the last of the forged papers, sealing them in another envelope. The sound of the clasp clicking shut echoed like a gavel in court. Ethan pushed his chair back. "You'll regret this, Nora." I smiled faintly. "I doubt it." Victoria gathered the unsigned papers and stacked them neatly. "You have 2 weeks to decide," she said. "After that, the properties will be listed for public rental. Market interest is already high." The cousins exchanged helpless glances. the realization setting in that the empire they'd bragged about for years was gone, replaced by contracts and consequences. As the meeting dissolved, I stood still, letting the noise fade behind me. It was strange how quiet justice sounded when it finally arrived. I walked toward the glass doors, and for the first time that day, breathed freely. By the next morning, the resort felt deserted, the laughter, the chatter all gone. I met Victoria and Daniel in the garden lounge for coffee. Victoria handed me her tablet. 3 cousins signed the agreements overnight, she said. The rest are pretending not to have received them. Daniel smiled faintly. They'll come around once they realize how expensive pride is. I nodded. Let them take their time. The truth doesn't expire. When they left, I stayed behind, watching the vineyard stretch toward the horizon. For years, I'd sat through family gatherings where my silence was mistaken for insignificance. Today, silence was my strength. It had spoken louder than all their laughter combined. My phone buzzed. Bookings confirmed for Tuscany, Malibu, Aspen. Projected monthly revenue, $120,000. Beneath it, another message from Edward. Please, Nora, can we talk? I stared at the screen, then deleted it. By sunset, I was back in my city apartment, the same one Chloe once mocked. The walls felt lighter now, not because they'd changed, but because I had. I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and checked a new listing, a coastal estate in Santorini. Victoria's email came through moments later. Excellent appreciation potential. Shall I move forward? I typed back one word. Yes. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was loud. It wanted witnesses. What I felt now was quieter, sharper satisfaction. They'd called me forgettable. People underestimate quiet women until the paperwork proves otherwise. As the lights of the skyline shimmered through my window, I smiled and whispered, Legacy isn't inherited, it's earned. Now the villas carried my name. A week later, the official rental reports arrived. Each property had been booked solid for the next quarter. Executives in Tuscany, a film producer in Malibu, a finance mogul in Singapore. The same places my relatives once flaunted for free were now turning 6 figures in monthly profit. Numbers had never looked so poetic. Daniel called that afternoon. You did the right thing, he said. They would have buried you in their arrogance if you hadn't fought back. I didn't fight, I told him. I just showed them the receipts. After we hung up, I went for a walk downtown, where no one knew my name or cared about my lineage. It felt good, ordinary. The kind of anonymity that made me powerful. When I got home, a letter waited in my mailbox. Handwritten. From Aunt Maggie. You taught this family something we forgot, that respect isn't inherited. It's earned. Don't lose that quiet strength, Nora. It's rarer than any fortune. I folded the note carefully and slipped it into a drawer beside my first business card, the one I printed on cheap paper 10 years ago when no one believed I could build anything. As night settled, I looked out over the city lights and thought about everything that had fallen apart so something better could rise. Revenge had never been my goal. It was just the side effect of truth finally having its turn. I raised my glass, the reflection of the skyline flickering in the wine's surface, and said softly to no one in particular, Here's to silence, to patience, and to the long game. Because in the end, the sweetest kind of victory isn't loud. It's the kind that signs your name on every page they once claimed as theirs.